Hey guys, so I want to talk today not only about this guy, but cheap Amazon or AliExpress Balisongs in general. But to start with this guy right off the bat, I like it. It's a nice little guy. It's a nice guy to like keep in your bag or just have with you whenever you want. It's cheap, so if you break it, not really big expense. But there are some good things and some bad things you need to know if you're gonna go this route of getting a cheap Amazon knife. I start off with the most important, which is just raw flipability. It does have a bit of a handle bias, but other than that, once you take the latch off and once you get everything Loctited and situated, it's honestly not bad. It's a little small, which is a problem with Amazon Balisongs and cheaper Balisongs in general. I don't know why they're all so small. Maybe it's just because companies think that they need to pander to children, so they make their knives a lot smaller. But this is considerably smaller than any regular Squid Industries, Glider, BRS, any normal Balisong. But the actual flipability is good. It runs on bearings, which for cheap Balisongs you actually really like to see. Bearings give you basically free good tolerances. The handles are sandwiched with these aluminum liners, and then there's a G10 scale on top, which is really nice. It gives it a lot of grip. This is the only knife I own that does have G10 on it, and I really like it. I actually really like the feel of it. The corners are a little sharp, but you could fix that with some sandpaper. That's to be expected out of a knife this cheap. But it's actually really grippy. It's fairly comfortable to flip. The blade is nice and rounded. If you watch my Arctic video, you know that I really like when blade edges are rounded. But it's really round, it's really smooth, and balance-wise, like I said, it's got a little bit of a handle bias, but it's nothing too bad. I don't think you're gonna have any trouble learning on this thing. My fans are a little weird just because I'm used to a neutral Balisong. But the handle bias really isn't bad, and some people even like handle bias. It does do rollovers extremely well. Aerials are okay. I think the bias is a little strong. It kind of throws some aerials off, but some other tricks like Z-chokers are kind of hit or miss, but I think that's just because I'm more used to my Arctic, which is perfectly neutral. A friend of mine, Odo, only uses this Balisong primarily for the moment, and he can do Z-chokers on it just fine. I'll link his video on this down in the description. He doesn't have the crazy camera setup in filmmaking knowledge that I do, but for what he's working with, he'd made a pretty good video on one of these, so definitely go check that out too. The actual play of the knife is very, very minimal. It's got great swing, no tap, no nothing, and I can attribute that to the bearings. I think the bearings do play a major part in that. But overall, yeah, flipping is good. It's comfortable. I love the G10, super grippy, and I think this is pretty solid to learn on. You won't have any issues doing any major tricks. There's nothing inherently very bad with this knife. Now, there is a major problem, and this is just something that I want to quickly talk about, which is all cheap knives, and this is in the debate. First of all, I should mention I'm excluding clones. I don't talk about clones because I personally do not support them. I have no issues with people buying clones, they're just not for me, so I don't want to touch them. But when it comes to original design, even though I think this is partially a clone, original design, whatever, Amazon, AliExpress, those cheap knives that you get for 15, 20 bucks and that's it. They all have a similar problem. And when I was getting into the Balisong hobby, I always wondered why these knives costed anywhere from $100 to like $500 just for trainers that are made of the same materials. And having this really kind of showed me why that happens. When you have a knife this cheap, you have so many tiny screws and so many things that are just not machined that well. And when that happens, basically, it wobbles, it falls apart. You could probably see if I do this, you can see my handles wiggle here. That is simply because the machining is not tight enough for these screws to stay perfectly tight all the time. They do have some wiggle room and they do back out, even after being Loctited, just because the tolerances just aren't good enough. There's too much play, there's too much wobble back and forth. And another thing that comes cheap with cheap Balisongs is the hardware itself being actually cheap, meaning these screws are very prone to being stripped, especially the smaller ones. And that's just one of the things you kind of got to be aware of when you buy a cheap Balisong like this. You need to know that it's not necessarily the flipping experience you're sacrificing. There are some cheaper knives that flip great. Mostly what it is the hardware is not going to be good, the tolerances are not going to be good, it's going to fall apart on you if you don't regularly maintenance it. Now, if you're someone who does keep track of their Balisongs and will maintenance this before you start flipping every day, you'll have no problem. But especially if you're new to the hobby and you don't really know how to maintenance Balisongs properly, you could have some major issues with this thing falling apart on you. But I feel like that does serve as a good thing. If you're gonna get into this hobby and you want to take it for a long time, you're gonna need to eventually know how to maintenance your Balisong. Because if you get a Balisong that's more expensive, you're gonna want to take care of it. So I'm honestly okay with the fact that you have to do so much work on this because it teaches you a lot. It's a learning experience. You're not just getting a knife and having it be perfect for the rest of your life. But it is something you need to be aware of if you are going to get this. And like I said, that's just cheap Amazon or AliExpress Balisongs in general. They require a lot of work because they don't have the tightest tolerances and they don't have the best hardware. But let's compare this to something that's in kind of the general price range, which is the squiddies. There is a decision to be made, excluding clones. Clones are a whole different thing. But there is a decision to be made. Should you buy something like this or should you go for a squiddy? And the debate over this versus any of the squiddy models, I think is really hard to say. I personally would really recommend going the squiddy route because I feel like although they are lighter, learning on a Balisong that's full size and that will last you a lot longer and he'll have to do less maintenance on will just be more fun overall. I definitely have no problem with people adding one of these to their collection, just either to show friends or just to have in their bag to take with you that you're not scared of losing. But when it comes to actually learning the skill and the hobby of flipping Balisongs, I think a squiddy is probably the better way to go. It's gonna be more fun. And honestly, when you're first starting, I learned this with any hobby. I do a lot of things. I play a lot of instruments. I make a lot of music. So I kind of know where to start from the ground up because I learn a lot of different things. And the most important thing that I've learned is that it doesn't matter how good your tools are. If those tools are not helping you to have fun, you're gonna get bored of the hobby. So that's where I'd recommend the squiddy, just because they're more fun, they'll last you longer, you won't have to do as much maintenance. And then you could think about getting something like this, not necessarily as an upgrade, but just to get used to the weight of a metal Balisong. There's no problem having multiple cheap Balisongs before you get your first good Balisong. It's really up to you. But overall, it flips pretty good, honestly. It's not a bad flipping experience, it's just the maintenance you have to do and the work you need to put in to keep up with these and make sure this thing doesn't literally just fall apart is quite a lot, honestly. You might not be able to see, but these two screws don't match because all 4 of the bottom screws actually have fallen out and I've lost them, and I've had to use the replacement hardware that comes with this, and that's just what you sign up for. But, you know, overall, I could see people buying this. I don't regret buying it. It's a nice little tool when I just want to have something to throw around and just have fun with. And even if you want to get a knife just to try bearings, it's only 30 bucks. It's really easy to get your hands on. They're just on Amazon. So it's a nice little addition to the collection. It's an okay starter knife. I definitely wouldn't recommend sticking with it for a long amount of time because comparing it to a good knife, there really is no comparison. You can immediately tell which is better just in the size and the balance and the feel in the hands. But you know, I don't mind it. I kind of like the little guy. I like having a small knife I can just throw in my bag. And although my Arctic will stay my main beater, it's nice that I have something extra that I can, if I want to show a friend how to do a trick because they're interested in what's going on, I can hand them this. I would honestly recommend going the squiddy route, like I said. I flipped a few of them and they're just more fun. They're more enjoyable to flip, honestly. But if you only have 30 bucks or you have an Amazon gift card, they're not bad. But that's kind of it. Thank you so much for watching. More videos coming soon, I promise. If you like tech or PC gaming, then make sure to look at my other channel where I have a bunch of videos just like this about various tech topics. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon.